Hey, it's Dougie from Valto, and in this webinar, I'm going to be talking to you about building external portals using Power Platform's Power Pages solutions. I'm going to be covering off some of the basics, but I'm also going to be diving into some examples, some dummy content that we've set up for previous customers to show you the types of things which are achievable with Power Pages. So stick with me as I'm going to walk you through the ability to understand the different types of Power Apps, and one of which is the Power Pages, how they differ from traditional websites, as well as that, the benefits of Power Pages, the integrations and the data collection elements of Power Pages. And we're also going to go through some use cases. So these are just some mocked up examples that we've put together, which are loosely based on real Power Page solutions that we've built for our customers. As well as that, I'm going to also dig into a bit of the licensing at the end of Power Pages, because that is a bit different to your traditional Power Apps. So some key takeaways: you're going to know when to use different Power Apps. You're going to learn how others are actually using Power Pages. As well as that, I'm going to talk at the end about how Valto can help you achieve building an external portal using Power Pages. But I want to start off by talking about what are Power Pages. Now, Power Pages, I would see it, they sit under this Power Platform. Technically, they're not Power Apps, but a lot of people refer to them as Power Apps pages. So some of the kind of wording that I'm using here is referring to them, but they do sit alongside other types of Power Apps. It's worth knowing the different types of Power Apps to know when to choose a Power Page. So the first type of Power App is referred to as a Canvas Power App. Now, these are essentially the ability to create completely bespoke applications for mobile phones, tablets, things like that, known as Canvas apps. These provide a simplistic environment to create what you need. They're very much like, think of it if you were building an app using PowerPoint. They're all based on slides. You can have buttons, you can collect information. So rather than using complicated coding or programming languages, you can have an easy drag and drop interface to build your apps. And they're all kind of programmed using Excel-like formulas. Now, I'll go into in a moment the differences between the types of apps, but these Canvas apps are only to be used really for internal users. They can't be shared externally unless you're planning on licensing an external user to bring them in to use this app. They're not surfaceable via Google or kind of external facing. So they're perfect for internal use, but not so much for external use. Then we have what we call model-driven Power Apps. Now, model-driven apps start with your data. A lot of people, if you're familiar with Dynamics 365, will be familiar with the interface of model-driven app. A model-driven app essentially is very much like Dynamics 365, but Dynamics 365, think of it Dynamics 365 like a pre-built set of model-driven apps which are doing something specific, like building a CRM system or managing marketing campaigns or whatever it is. They have multiple modules which are essentially pre-built model-driven apps, but you can build them yourself, building them up from the shape of your core business data and processes in what we call Dataverse, which is essentially the database in the background of the Power Platform. To model forms, you can have views of data, other components there like certain visuals and graphs and things like that. Model-driven apps are quick and easy, so the benefit of them over Canvas apps is the fact that they're so quick to put together. Once you've got your tables and your relationships and everything set up, it will spin up the user interface for you. The downside is they are very much the user interface is not overly configurable in the sense that you can move things around, but you can't make it bespoke to how you really want it to look and feel, which again in itself is a kind of benefit, because then you don't have to worry too much about bugs in the user interface and things like that. Comparing this to Power Pages, though, again, it's not an external solution. You're not bringing in external people to use this. It's not a portal interface. It is an internal driven application. So this brings us on to the final type of Power App that we're talking about in this context of the Power Platform, which is the Power Pages. They were formerly known as Power Portals or Power Apps portals. They are perfect for anonymous external facing portals, whether they be for customers, suppliers, contractors, whatever it is. These are basically the third type of Power App that includes external accessibility. And that could be from search engines like Google. You could surface this up. Think of it like a website is the best thing to think of it as. So rather than it being a application, an app or something like that, which you can access on your mobile phone and tablets and things like that, although you can access them through those devices, don't think of it as an app. Think of it as a website. Again, the licensing is different for Power Pages than what you're probably familiar with, so we're going to cover that off at the end as well. Again, though, all the data for this lives inside of Dataverse, inside of Microsoft 365. So that's one of the core benefits of having your website, this portal, this external access point built with Power Pages, is that all the data is then stored inside of Microsoft 365. Makes it much easier to access and even use those other types of apps we were talking about before, like Canvas apps and model-driven apps, to access that data. So say, for example, if you had a membership portal and you wanted your admin team to be managing those actual members, they wouldn't be doing it through the actual website. They'd be doing it through an app in the background, which could either be a model-driven app or a Canvas app. So comparing the different types of Power Apps. So I've put a little table together here which shows the Canvas apps, model-driven apps, and the Power Pages combined. So when we're thinking about what is the best solution for you, this is just a little segment from this. Now, when our consultants talk to our customers, there is a lot more that goes into making the decision about what is the best app for you. But I try to boil down some of the key components which helps us derive what is the best type of solution, the best product that's going to fit your requirements. So the first feature is integrations and connectors. Now, all three will nicely integrate with a lot of different products, both Microsoft products and third-party products. There's some native integrations, and there'll be some that you'll need to use like Power Automate to connect with. But essentially, I don't let integrations slow us down for picking which app that we're going to pick, because we can integrate anything with either of these three. Customize user interface. Now, Canvas apps, as I say, you can completely bespoke the user interface. You can make it look however you like. Within a certain parameters, I guess, of most Power Apps do look like Canvas Power Apps. You can almost spot them out, but you can have the user interface however you like. You can move things around completely. Whereas model-driven apps, you can't. You can configure them, so you can add fields and you can move fields around a little bit, but you couldn't, say, for example, completely bespoke the form to make it exactly how you wanted it to be. Now, with Power Pages, you can. Now, it's all essentially like a website, HTML, CSS, JavaScript type driven. But there is a small element of a content management system that's built into Power Pages. So if you wanted things like news articles or knowledge-based articles or things like that being published to your portal, your external-facing solution, then you could use Power Pages to do that. And as I say, you can have it completely customized because it's all based on HTML. There is an element of you probably will need a developer, and we'll talk about that in a moment, to customize that, but it is completely customizable. Responsive native. Now, this is basically if the app is completely responsive natively. Now, Canvas apps and Power Pages, I'm putting down as no. So Canvas apps, you do need quite a significant amount of sort of developer knowledge in terms to get those responsive, to get them to play nicely. Model-driven apps, it's just there. So many people take this for granted, but it is responsive. The user interface is really, really slick and easy to use, and it is responsive natively. Power Pages, again, you will find some templates which claim to be responsive, but I've actually got an example that I'm going to come through later on that will show you it's not perfect, and it's going to need a developer really to make it properly responsive. And that brings me on to the next feature, is responsive if you have a developer required. So if you have a developer, yes, you can make Canvas apps responsive. Yes, you can make Power Pages responsive, and you don't need a developer to make model-driven apps responsive. Business process automation. Now, what I mean by this is like gateways. So like, say, for example, you've got a process and it has certain steps, step 1, step 2, step 3, and each step you need to make sure you've captured a certain amount of information. So let's say, for example, it's the sales process of selling interior design or something like that. You would have a consultant go out, they would capture some amount of information from the customer. That would be stage 1. Stage 2 is that it then goes to the designer for them to review it to make sure they've got everything, and they maybe put a quote together. Stage 3 is it goes back to the salesperson to sell it. Each one of those stages, you have certain information you have to capture. Now, Canvas apps, it doesn't have that built into it. You have to build those kind of stages, those gateways yourself into the application. Whereas model-driven apps, you don't. It has what it calls business process flows, which is gateways that you can have that make sure certain information is captured at certain times. What I mean by that is that it will kind of like have certain forms, so the forms will be different at each one of those stages, and you can make fields required, so you can't go through the process without having them required. And all of that is built into both model-driven apps and Power Pages that we're going to look at later on. Whereas with Canvas apps, you have to build all of that logic and all of that kind of stuff yourself. It makes it a lot more complicated, and it also makes it a lot more likely that you're going to have a bug, that you might come up against something and you haven't properly coded the logic that says you can move on to stage 2 properly. So people are moving on to stage 2 and you haven't properly forced them to give information in stage 1. Complex data models. Now, with this, Canvas apps is very much about the front end, whereas model-driven apps is very much about the back end. It's in the name, model as in model of data. So model-driven apps is much better at having advanced relationships between data. So, for example, in that scenario, there might be data around the customer themselves, about the company, about the salesperson that sold it, about the products that they've chosen, and all of these things are related together. Now, with Canvas apps, you're going to have a bit of a job to sort of tie all that together unless you're using Dataverse in the background. A lot of people use SharePoint lists for that, for Canvas apps, but that doesn't come with the same relationship building. Model-driven apps is built in, and because Pages works on the same type of data as in Dataverse, then Pages also has that ability to have very strong, complex data models. Premium licenses. Now, this often is where people get unstuck because actually Canvas apps are included in the licenses you already have. So if you already have business licenses or enterprise licenses, Canvas apps are already in there. You can use things like Excel documents or SharePoint lists to be your data source. So you don't need an additional license for that. With model-driven apps and Power Pages, you are going to require additional licenses for them. Full pages and dialogues. So Canvas apps is very much sort of pinned into a screen that you see. Imagine you have to design it on a PowerPoint slide. That's basically what you have with Canvas apps, whereas model-driven apps, you can have much longer, fuller pages that can scroll down. And same with Power Pages as well. You've got full pages. You can have dialogue and text and things like that built into those pages. Developer required. Now, my honest opinion is that you can probably build a very basic Canvas app and a model-driven app yourself without too much need for an advanced developer or consultant or things like that to get you off the ground. You can learn a lot about those different things. Power Pages, you could, if you wanted to, if you could launch a template and the template was very close, and we're going to look at some of these templates later in this webinar. But if it was very close, you might be able to launch it. But again, there's a lot of advanced things that are in the background. If you want it to appear in Google properly, if you want it to have like a domain name, so if you wanted it to have like valtoproducts.co.uk or something like that as the URL name, you're going to need a little bit more advanced knowledge to be able to achieve those things. So I've put down here that you do need a developer for Power Pages. External users being completely anonymous. So say, for example, you wanted to have a website. So going back to that example of interior design before, if you wanted to have a brochure website and show everybody all the different products and things like that you offer, you wouldn't be able to do that with Canvas apps. You wouldn't be able to do that with model-driven apps. You'd have to have a Power Page for that. So hopefully that gives you a bit of insight into how we choose the different Power Pages. But why use it to build your website? So how does it differ from existing websites? So the ease of use of content management. So as I was saying before, if you wanted to have things like news articles, knowledge-based articles, things like that, it has a content management system built into it. So it's much easier to release content. So once the portal, the website, whatever you want to refer to as is built, it's really easy to add new content to it. The real most differentiating factor, though, is the integration with Microsoft products. So because the data is in the background of Dataverse, you can easily access the data through other model-driven apps, Canvas apps, things like that. You can also integrate SharePoint. So say, for example, you want to be able to be uploading documents or you're sharing documents via this external facing portal. You can have SharePoint natively integrated to it. It also integrates to Dynamics 365 really well, and other workflow tools like Power Automate play really nicely with this. Whereas if you were using another third-party website like WordPress or something like that, you're going to have a lot more barriers to cross to integrate all of these different aspects of the portal into your Microsoft products. Rapid development. So it's much quicker because Power Pages is all built on a sort of framework. It's much quicker to build out one of these than it would be to build something from scratch with HTML, CSS, and things like that. And the scalability of it, because it's hosted by Microsoft and it's a cloud-based solution, you don't need to worry about performance and maintaining servers and uptime and things like that. Microsoft just, because they host it, they handle all of those things. It takes a load of stress out. And when I speak to my customers, truly, that is one of the things that you cannot really understand the value of is the stress that it takes away by using Power Pages instead of a third-party application. Something else I'll put in here as well is often a lot of the customers we deal with are moving away from a third-party solution into Power Pages because they want to take back control of their data. They want to make sure that they've got access to the data and they can get to it quickly and easily. And that's what we're doing with this Power Pages. We're putting the power and the data back into your hands. As a maintenance and support, it's all handled by Microsoft, so you don't have to worry about that. And from a cost perspective, we are going to come on to talk about licenses. It usually works out much cheaper than third-party solutions that previously people have put together. So that is a real benefit of using Power Pages. Now, I was saying before a bit about the forms and processes that we have inside of Power Pages. Now, this allows for seamless form submissions, guiding users through the process effortlessly with intuitive interfaces and step-by-step instructions. As we can see here, we're submitting a form and we can see the different, what I was talking about, gateway stages previously before, we can see here. So we can see we've got the business name. So say, for example, this is someone submitting a form for legal assistance. There's certain things that we want people to fill out and make sure that we've got captured and agreed to. And we've got these all in different gates and stages. So we know we've definitely captured the business name, the legal information, the documentation we need from them, any feedback and things like that, their final confirmation. All of that is set up and configured so that we know that we have the information we need to start processing it straight away. So we're ensuring the right data is captured at the right time. This is one of the most fundamental elements of this when we're, again, working with external parties. We don't want someone to have to submit something to us and then have to go back to them to get more information before we can process it. We've worked with a lot of companies in the past before that have built like calculator type Power Pages. So for example, if you were to be like remortgaging or if you were looking to get a quote for something, you could capture the information you need to through a process similar to this and then even spit out a calculation at the end and say, we think your value of the car that you're trying to sell to us is X. And you could spit that onto the page for them. So because they're guided through the information that you need to capture, you can give them that calculation nice and easily. You could have conditional questions, changing dependent on previous answers. So that could be a little bit like, I like to think of this as like when you're a kid, did you ever have one of those books where you could choose the ending of your own story? So if you wanted to cross the bridge, you go to page 10, whereas if you wanted to go into the spooky haunted house, you go to page 20. Very much like with this, we can change the pathway. So if someone was, say, getting a remortgage quote, you could say to them, okay, how many years do you want a mortgage for? And if they say 30, then the next question might be something different than if they were to tell you that they wanted to mortgage for 10 years, for example. So we can branch the logic of these questions. We can have attachments. And again, I was saying before, we can integrate this directly into SharePoint. So you could leverage the storage capacity that you already have in SharePoint to store the documents that you're capturing during this point of capturing the information. We can have suggested fields, so we can say, okay, we want this information from you, or even required fields that you must provide this. You can have tooltips to explain. So say, for example, you're asking someone for certain documentation, you'd have a tooltip to explain why you're asking for it or what type of documentation. So say, for example, you're asking them for authentication or something like that, or evidence of something, you could give them a tooltip to say exactly what it would be that you would accept. As I say, gateways. So for example, here we've got 1, 2, oh, it's moving. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 6 different gateways here that we're moving through. As I say, it's built into the form processes of Power Pages. Submissions can trigger workflows, so that could be we wanted to send a notification to somebody, we wanted a process to kick in, we can trigger this using Power Automate. Data can be accessed via internal Power Apps. As I say, all this data that's then submitted. So we once built a portal for somebody that was doing quotations, and what we wanted it to do after the back of that is we wanted the sales team to be notified. So they got notified in Teams that this was submitted, and then they had a model-driven app that they could go in to review the request of actually what someone was getting a quote for, and then they could be picking up the phone. So their target was they wanted to call people within an hour of submission, and we achieved that using automated workflows to notify people, giving them a model-driven app to access the data that have been submitted, and we made sure that they got to hit that objective. Something else which is really valuable about Power Pages is those integrational points that we talked about before. So we can extend the functionality of a Power Pages way easier than we could do with a traditional website. This allows us to integrate all sorts of different third parties. So I've previously mentioned before things like model-driven apps. Again, we can access this data. Power Automate, we can trigger workflows, as we mentioned before. Third parties, so we could embed things, we could redirect things, we could bring in data. So some of the calculations we've done in the past before has required that we call an API, which if you're non-techie basically means we're calling some information on another website and pulling that in to provide an up-to-date quote. But something that's really interesting, and we've recently completed a project which has allowed Power Pages to take payments. So this is something else. So if you're thinking about doing like a membership portal or something like that, or someone's got to pay for a service, they're booking something maybe, Power Pages now has a native payment gateway, so you can take payments from people, or you can integrate something like Stripe, which is a globally renowned, fantastic integration for taking payments for services or whatever it needs to be. So you can integrate those payments directly into your Power Pages. We worked, as I recently, with somebody that was building a membership portal, and their members pay a certain price every year to be accessing certain information and being able to submit information for review and things like that. Got to be careful what I say because a lot of it's under NDA. But this allowed them to have multiple tiered levels of payments as well. So dependent on what type of member you were, let's say there's member A, member B, member C categories, there'd be different price ranges. There was also the ability to have certain discounts and things like that, dependent on your age and things like that. So, or if you're a student and things like that. So we could have different types of payments, and we could bounce people to different avenues of payments and things like that. And with the workflows that's built into it, we also have the ability to have reminders to say you need to pay and blah, blah, blah. And we also built a little bit like how, imagine if you subscribe to Netflix and you didn't pay. At a certain point, probably quickly after the month you haven't paid, the service would be switched off. We can build that with Power Pages so that when you log in, it knows that you've not paid for that subscription. And it says, sorry, you don't have access to this anymore. And it bounces you to a page that says, if you would like to renew your subscription, click this button, and it takes you through to a payment gateway like this that we can see on this page for Woodgrove Bank. So again, fantastic things that we can do to integrate into Power Pages. So now I've set the scene about Power Pages, and you've seen the types of things it can do, the types of things it integrates with, and what it's really good at in terms of processing data. Let's look at some real-world examples. Now, as I say, these are based on a mixture of things that we've done for customers in the past before, and it's just the early stage proof of concept, so they're not going to look particularly pretty, or templates from Microsoft that we've, again, built upon for our customers. So the first example I'm going to talk about is the ability to have a community. Now, this does require a login, essentially, so you can have logins for people. And those logins, by the way, they can be a whole host of different things. They could be an email address and password that you have specified, or that the customer or whoever's using this community has specified themselves. Or it could be things like Facebook authentication or Twitter. So if they've got a Facebook or Twitter or Google account, something like that, they could authenticate to this portal using those accounts as well. And we can also bespoke this. So once we know who they are, we can configure the user interface and the experience and the information they have access to, depending on who they are, depending on what level of membership they maybe have. All these different things we can provide a bespoke feel. But this is a community. So say, for example, you've got a business and you're looking to have more of a community feel to it so people can ask questions and work together and get latest information. You could have this as a portal that they log into and maybe search for things. So they could search for things based on web pages you've published, blog articles, forum questions, ideas, cases, knowledge articles, and they can search all of that information. So this is really useful as well for people that maybe are building out like FAQs and things like that. But I'll talk a bit more about that later on. Further down the page, you can see we could have articles. Now, because this is just a dummy one, we don't have any sort of articles in here, but you could show almost like a news feed of news articles that have come up, most recent ones, top rated articles, things like that. We could also have the ability to have forums, ideas or blogs being submitted through this, or access to knowledge-based articles, creating cases or contacting. So having all that information readily available makes it much easier for people as part of the community. One of the key things that I love about these type of community pages is the forums. And again, this is not going to be branded or anything like that. This is just the standard of the way it looks. So it does look a little bit 90s, if I'm honest. But for all the ones which we have really put together for production use for our customers, they look way slicker than this. But this could be a forum where people go in and ask questions, things like that. So we go into general discussion area and we could create a brand new thread if we had a question or if we wanted to discuss something. So again, I've got to be careful what I say because a lot of the people that we work with do have NDAs, but we recently built a community out for somebody who it was about, the whole community was about something very specific and niche. It was about a specific industry. And those people wanted the ability for all these thought leaders and people that are sharing knowledge and things like that to have a forum which was moderated by the industry thought leaders, that people could come in, ask questions and help each other. And it was actually all about career growth is what it was predominantly for. So people could come in, post questions and get people in their industry to help them further their career and sort of help answer questions, which makes it easier for them to take a step up that ladder. But those people that are coming and asking those questions, they're paying for that service. They're paying to be a member of this external portal that they can come in and ask these industry leaders questions and help them further their career. But you can see it's really easy to create a new thread. Just give it a title, the type, whether it's discussion, whether it's a question, whether it's a problem, some content around it, even attach files if you wanted to. And then that creates a brand new thread, which the moderators, these authors, like system administrator or whatever, is obviously just a test account, could go in, answer the questions. So we could jump into this new thread in here. And it's essentially just like the ability for people to post questions, reply to each other, things like that. Typical social media type feel to this. But again, the possibilities of this are endless. You could use this for all sorts of ways of engaging with a specific community. I say that's just forums though. It could be something similar that we use for sharing ideas and the ability to upvote ideas and things like that, whether it's about your service or things that potentially you could offer. So very much like how Reddit works, where you could post an idea and then people could upvote it, makes it much easier for people to see afterwards. And also we've got things like knowledge bases. So it could be certain articles. Again, this is just a dummy one, so we don't have any real articles in here. But it could be knowledge articles that you're posting people towards. So if there was, say, moderators were noticing there was a lot of questions being asked repeatedly or things like that, they could take that knowledge, put it into a knowledge base and make it much easier for people to access afterwards. I've also seen this type of thing used before by like IT support companies to build a knowledge base that people can go and see frequently asked questions and things like that. But again, we'll come on to talking a bit about that later on. The other thing about membership portals, or I should say any type of portal, is that when you authenticate, you then have a profile. So you have your own profile page. And again, you could customize this, have different fields in here, and then allow the user themselves, if they wanted to configure it. So they could have their own profile picture. They could even reset their own password in here if they wanted to. Then they can answer certain questions that you've predetermined for them. But something which I find really useful, and a lot of the membership type portals that we've built in the past before, often with memberships comes the ability to have preferences of something. So we built out a portal for an organization which do a lot of events. So you pay to be a member of their club, and there was a lot of events. So there was like Christmas parties, summer parties, things like that. And then they wanted to have preferences to say, okay, which parties would you likely attend? So that way that they can configure the automated emails which go out afterwards, which are inviting people to come to those particular events. It could be newsletters. So that same organization, they offered, they had a huge amount of different styles of newsletters. I think it was like 30 or 40 different newsletters they were putting out a month. Now, you can obviously imagine if you're a member of that, not all of that is going to be of interest to you, and you don't want to be battered by 40 emails a month from them. So instead, you could go in and you could cherry pick a checklist like this of all the different newsletters, different types of things that you wanted to receive as a member, as a user of this portal, and then all the automations in the background would know exactly what you wanted to be issued, and then it would only send you the relevant newsletter emails that were for you. But again, we can completely sort of customize all of these fields. This is just giving you a bit of a flavor of what it would potentially look like. So here's another example of a Power Page. Now, this one is around permit application. So again, take all of these examples, by the way, with a pinch of salt. I'm not saying you have to use this for permit applications and things like that, but we've worked with a lot of organizations which have used similar functionality for the ability to apply for something and then get a response. So there was one that we actually worked with UK Gov on. Again, I've got to be careful, don't say too much, but it was essentially applications that people were submitting for something to be reviewed. And actually that particular process previously involved people physically having to put documents on a CD and then post that CD to a particular section of the UK government for them to review. Whereas actually it was fully replaced with a Power Portal, which allowed people to go in, submit the information that they needed to submit. All that information was then stored inside of SharePoint, processed. We even had retention policies, which was clearing up that data after a period of time and things like that, and made it so much easier for people to process that information. So you can see here, this is just a bit of a landing page. It's trying to look at quite sort of fancy and jazzy, but again, this is just a sort of mock-up essentially, but you can have it to look and feel however you like. But as we scroll down, maybe there's a bit of information. Because this is, as I say, it's a website, we can make this look and feel however we want. So even if you had in mind a template of what you wanted your website to look like, we can make it look like that. We can take templates from other websites that we've seen, looks and feels, things like that, to make it look how you want. If you wanted to make it look very much like your public-facing website already, you just want to add an external login element of it, then this is perfect, because we can use all the same look and feel, layout and things like that of your public website. And in fact, customers in the past before have requested, and we've built these Power Pages to look almost identical to their public-facing website. So it's a seamless transition. If you're on their public-facing website and you want to go into their login area to get members-only content or things like that, you could click a button and it doesn't look like you've ever left. Of course, the URL changes, and you can always go back to the previous website, but the look and feel stays exactly the same. Some people choose that they want it to look, although branded, they want it to look and feel totally different, so people know that they're in a almost like premium external user type of area. But what I'm saying is we can include text, images, embed videos, all sorts of different stuff like a public website would do. So this, as applications, the applications related to things like residential or commercial property, the permit process. So this is just explaining what the process would be. And then we've got sort of common permits. So people could click on this to start off a process. So say, for example, they wanted to get a solar permit or something like that. They could click on that. Then that jumps you through to start your kind of process. So it might be click on submit here. Once you've kind of filled out all of those fields and things like that. But obviously this is just a test one. So we've just got some example application info here. So first name, we might say Joe Blog. Oh, jumped ahead here. Joe Blogs. Email joe@blogs ltd. Phone number. There we go. And again, we can actually, if we wanted to, put a bit of formatting on this so we can make sure that it is definitely an email address that's being submitted. Then it jumps us through to the actual project details or elements of this. Now, this is what we're talking about. These are the different gateways that we were talking about before to make sure we're capturing the right information at the right time. Of course, all of these fields are fully customizable, so we can have however many fields we want in whatever order we want. So enter description of permit. So I could just put something like, I want a permit to put loads of solar panels on my roof. Then click on next. Then it might ask us for required documents. So this is where we could upload any evidence or anything, any plans that we have that we're submitting as part of this application. Acknowledgement. So this is just saying, have I actually made sure I've read all the terms and conditions, things like that. Say yes. Maybe I could put my initials in here and just sort of say, yep. I've looked at that. Then the final thing is to say that it's going for a review. Is this all this information correct? Does it look right before I submit? And I say, yep, I'm going to submit. And that's then submitted my application. Now, in a real world system, of course, we would then automate things like an email to that person to say, thank you, we've received your application, your permit application, and expect a response within the next 2 to 3 business days or something like that. We could also redirect this page. So we could redirect this page back to a certain page or a thank you page, or even an area like this, which is like my permit. So if you have already submitted an application, you could maybe then see your application here. So you could see that I've been submitted my application and I could see where it's up to. I'll say this is a bit of a clunky system because it's just a draft version of what this looks like. But you can then see what my application is. Now, the cool thing about this is, as I say, it integrates with other applications. So we could have a Canvas app or a model-driven app, which is accessing all this data in the background. So the people that are processing these applications can use a Power App to update it and say, okay, this is approved, or we need more information, or things like that. So then the people that are submitting this, the customer, can see updated notes. They could see that the status has changed to in review, for example. Maybe we could have some SLAs built into this. So it would have something here to say, you can expect an update by this particular date, for example, or all these different ways that you can then interact with people through an interface that's external, that they can log into to get the latest information. So let's move on to another example. Now, this one was actually a proof of concept that we put together for educational. So this is something which is essentially booking, but again, take this with a pinch of salt. You could use this for booking all sorts of things. It doesn't have to just be events. It could be all sorts of different things. But essentially what this was used for is a college that was a private school, and they had additional kind of courses and classes and things like that, which allowed people to book on to specific things additional as well. Now, this is a really good example actually of responsive. So I'm just going to change this to simulate being in a mobile phone view. So if I click on this, hopefully, there we go. It will simulate being in a phone. So you can see here, you would log in, and again, you could do this from a mobile phone, from a tablet, from a desktop computer, but this is responsive. So you could either search for a particular event, you could filter by a category or a sort of season, for example. And then by selecting them, we can click on search, and that will then filter those down for us. So we can now see in the winter season, we've got Mondays and Wednesdays, we've got coding camp, we've got homework club, we've got morning chess club. So something's gone a little bit wrong with the formatting of this, but as I say, it is just a mock-up proof of concept that we're working on. And then once you kind of sign in, so as I say, it would know who you were. So you would sign in maybe as a parent or a student, and you sign in. It knows, okay, now I'm Joe Blogs, I'm parent of Jane Blogs, and I'm booking them onto the morning chess club through this, which again could then trigger some automation to notify that person to say that they've been added onto the list of people who are attending and things like that. It could kick off a whole series of workflows off the back of that. Now, as I say, take this with a pinch of salt. It could be used for all sorts of different types of things. It could be used for like asset booking or booking like desk booking, or it could be all sorts of different things that you might want to integrate to. And then the final example I'm going to show you, again, this is a very, very common use for Power Pages, is an FAQ. So there's loads of... One of the things that I find when I speak to a lot of customers is there's a lot of time wastage by people answering questions repeatedly. And that's both internal, but also external as well. So people asking, saying, "Oh, how long will it usually take to get delivered?" Or "What do I need to do in preparation for this?" Or blah, 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 whatever it is. There's often a lot of questions. Now, being able to point people towards this, even before they even ask the question. So maybe, let's say, for example, if we were using this scenario that we're talking about before, like interior design, we could use Power Pages to do almost that full kind of piece. We could have somebody coming into a brochure website and looking at it before they've even signed up as a member. They could be looking at what products we sell and things like that. Then we might have them fill out a little form so we know who they are, their preferences and things like that, which triggers an automated workflow to our sales team to book in a consultation with them. And then it automatically could bounce them to an FAQ to sort of say, okay, well, what next? What are you going to expect? What questions do you have that we could potentially even answer before we've had a consultation? So they could search for questions in here, keywords, articles, things like that. Topics, so you could then group some of these by topics at getting started or whatever topic it was that you wanted to include, and then just some typical kind of featured articles. So how do I change my password? What do I do if my account is locked? So these are some typical things which people often ask about, like membership portals. So again, if you had a membership portal, you'd probably want to have an FAQ element to that you could bounce people to if they wanted to know how to change their password, or how do I submit an issue or contact you, or just having contact information so you can bounce people directly to. But again, this is all super easy and simple to create brand new articles. It's all based around a content management system. So again, having a title, description, links, documents, things like that, to have those articles really simple and easy for people to create and then consume. So I'd love to know what you think about that. So if you could drop some comments below about what ideas have you got? How are you planning on that you could potentially use this? What third-party systems could this replace for you? As I say, take it all with a pinch of salt. You could use it for loads of different things. So if you've got any questions about scenarios or how you might use it, again, drop them in the comments below, and I'm happy to answer those as we're going along. So how to license your new website. So with Power Pages, it is a little bit different than what we're used to with traditional Power Apps. Now, I should prefix this by saying, and I've put a note here, that all of this is at the time of recording. Obviously, Microsoft could change the costs and things like that. And in fact, actually, I would say the costs have actually gone down over the past couple of years. Costs have actually steadily gone down. But take it with a pinch of salt, as I say. Now, the cool thing is you can get a 30-day free trial. So if you wanted to have a little play around with it, or have a little look at it, or if you wanted to build a proof of concept, quite often we help people build out very small, lightweight proof of concepts that have only taken us a week or two to put together. And we can use a 30-day free trial to do that. So you don't even have to pay for anything during that that point in time. Now, there are two plans when it comes to the licensing. We have the anonymous user plan and the authenticated user plan. Now, the anonymous user plan is only $75 US dollars per month. Obviously, I'm no mathematician, but that's probably somewhere in the £60. If you're in Great British pounds, it's probably about £60 per month, something like that. And that's for about 500 users. Now, that is for like brochure websites, things like that, where you're just giving people information. So if you're just pushing out information to people and they're consuming it and it's just a one-way street, that's fine. If I'm totally honest, you're not getting the main benefit of what Power Pages is about. And most of our customers don't use that plan because it's not really just about being a website. They also are expecting information to come back to them from their third-party external users. So that's why we need the authenticated user plan, which is £200, $200, I should be clear, which is obviously less than that in pounds per month. And that covers about 100 users. A lot of this is it's not necessarily the amount of users, it's the amount of usage. So it might be that you have more users than that, but the usage of that per month is much less. So you don't necessarily need to scale and up that plan. But you can scale it. So if you did have more users than that, you can scale it and it will grow with you. And that's one of the main benefits of this, is that it is completely scalable and it'll scale as you grow. All the data for both of these plans are stored inside of Dataverse, and you have the kind of the storage capacities which go along with that. So as I say, if you're wanting to get the main benefits of two-way street, you would need that authenticated user plan. If you're just wanting like a brochure website, you can just have it for that $75 per month. So how can Valto help you build out your external portal, your website using Power Pages? Now, the way that we do this is that we would have a consultation with you, and that's completely free. So we have a 1-hour free consultation where you would meet one of our Power Platform experts, and they would walk you through essentially what your requirements are at a high level to understand, is Power Pages the best solution for you, or is it another Power App? And we want to make sure you're getting the best value and you're not overspending, you're not overcommitting to licenses you don't need and things like that. We just need to understand a bit more about the situation for you. We can always give you a kind of ballpark then on what we think that the project would be, as in time, cost, materials, who would need to be involved, all those good things. And it gives you the opportunity to ask any question, and there's no right or wrong or stupid questions. Make sure you're comfortable and get your questions answered by our experts. Following on from that free 1-hour consultation, we would then have a deep dive workshop, which would be a Power Apps workshop. The objective of our Power Apps workshop is to scope out the requirements of your business application and ensure you are prepared for the upcoming project. Following on from that workshop, we would give you a full report, which has all of our findings, your requirements, recommendations, all of that, with a fixed price proposal. Now, we do offer a sort of 100% quality guarantee, so it's fixed price. So we make sure that we deliver exactly what it is that we agreed in the workshop to the T of the requirements, and we'll make sure it's fully working and up to the top standards for you. And I'd say that workshop at the time of recording is £1,500. As I said at the time of recording, so don't hold me to that if anything was to change in a few years' time. But as I say, it's a very minimalistic type of cost that's required up front for this. In fact, it's something that you get access to a full qualified Power Platform expert for either a full day on site if you're in the UK, or it could be split out over multiple remote Teams sessions, which are again all recorded. And then any follow-up questions that you have. So anything after the report, we do a full breakdown for you and run you through the report. And any questions that follow on from that, we're here to help as well. But just to give you a bit of an idea about how that workshop would run, we do a bit of an introduction. So introduction to Valto, current ways of working, objective setting, so understanding what it is you're trying to achieve. We then run through with you all the different types of Power Apps, the different types of Power Apps, give you examples of different Power Apps to understand your requirements and make sure that Power Pages or whatever Power Apps you've chosen is the right fit. Then we talk about preparation. So what investigations do we need to do into the data? Where is the data? How much? What stakeholders are going to be involved? And give you an idea of all the preparation that would need to go in to start that project. Then licenses, so who should be licensed, how it would be licensed, the costs are involved, and making sure you are getting the best price. We're not trying to oversell your licenses, we're trying to get you the best possible deal. Then we'll talk a bit about the adoption. So actually then training, we are Valto, so Valto are adoption specialists. As you can see here, we've got a specialization from Microsoft. We're adoption change management specialist, which is not something that every Microsoft partner can boast. So we'll talk to you about adoption plans, which include training, comms, planning, things like that, and generally how you set up your adoption strategy to ensure that this solution is successfully adopted. So before we go into any final kind of Q&A, I just want to say, please do like this video. Please do drop a comment, question, things like that below, and subscribe to our channel because we have loads of fantastic content. It's not just about Power Apps or Power Pages, loads of about AI, Copilot, SharePoint, so much more stuff. So go and check that out afterwards as well. But now I'm just going to leave this running a little bit. So if you've got any questions at all, please use the comments feed below. Let us know any questions you have. Any sort of thought-provoking things. So what could you replace with this? Could you build a website? Are you thinking about building a membership portal? Let us know in the comments below. I'd really like to hear this because actually there's so many different types of solutions out there, and this is the most interesting part about Power Apps is hearing all the different types of avenues that people take using these solutions. Is really fascinating to me, so I'd really love to hear your stories below. If you want to reach out and book your free consultation with Valto, you can either email us at hello@valto.co.uk and just put in the subject free Power Pages or Power Apps consultation. It's always great as well if you have seen this video on YouTube, put it in the email to us as well, and just let us know that you've seen this video and that you enjoyed it and so forth. It's fantastic. Or you can go to www.valto.co.uk/YouTube, and that will then give you a contact form that you can submit as well. So I'd say thank you very much for joining today's webinar. If you've got any questions below, I'm going to leave this running in silence now just for a few minutes, so post any questions you have below, and we'll make sure every question is answered. Thank you for watching.